So, as alluded to in comments from my earlier video, I'm making a video regarding the new special grand jury that's been impaneled regarding Donald Trump. I'm going to go over the difference between a grand jury and a regular jury, what this grand jury is looking for, what's likely to come out of it, what evidence they're relying on, and anything else I can think of that's relevant to this situation. Obviously, I'm going to try to keep it as short as I can and make it as quick as possible, but I apologize in advance if it goes a little long. So, first of all, what's this all about? Well, the prosecutor from the SDNY, Cy Vance, you may remember, won a Supreme Court case granting him access to Donald Trump's tax returns that he had been, holding off from and appealing the subpoena for ages. He won the Supreme Court case, got mountains and mountains of tax return documents, was going through them with experts, and in addition, the longtime CFO, Chief Financial Officer, Alan Weisselberg, who's been the CFO of the Trump Organization since Donald Trump's father was in charge of it, his ex-daughter-in-law, meaning his son's ex-wife, actually agreed to assist the prosecution in this case and turned over a bunch of financial documents that she had in her possession and voluntarily became a cooperating witness in the investigation. And also, Michael Cohen has allegedly, in addition to his testimony that he gave before Congress, voluntarily gone and given information at the SDNY something like over 23 times. So in the end, it all amounted to enough stuff for Cy Vance to impanel a special grand jury in the state of New York. So first, let's go over the difference between a grand jury and a regular jury. I should start out by pointing out, in Connecticut, we don't have grand juries. There's no such thing as an indictment. We arrest people on what's called speedy information or a warrant. In other states, you need to have a grand jury indictment before you can make an arrest, or you need to have a warrant. I'm not going to get into the difference between speedy information and grand jury because it's not relevant here, but I should just let everyone know that I don't deal with grand juries, but I can still explain what one is. First, let's dispense with the term special. It's only a special grand jury, and that a regular grand jury typically only sits from a period of 1 week to 1 month. It should be noted, a grand jury will handle any criminal case that comes up during the time period that it's impaneled. It's not usually impaneled for just one case. So if you're called, it's about the only thing that makes a grand jury similar to a regular jury is that you get a jury summons to be on it. A regular jury is comprised of anywhere from 6 to 12 members. They sit at a trial, a specific event. They come to a verdict. If it's a criminal trial, it's obviously proof beyond a reasonable doubt. If it's a civil trial, it's a preponderance of the evidence, meaning more likely than not. Their verdict has to be unanimous. As I said, there's 6 to 12 of them. They get their jury summons in the mail. They're selected through a process called voir dire, where the lawyers question them and have a certain number of challenges they're allowed to exercise to strike people, either for cause or for their own peremptory reasons. They get a limited number of just challenges on their own. A grand jury is not like that at all. First thing is, a grand jury is completely secret. You can't know who's on it or anything like that. What makes this grand jury special is that it's being impaneled for a period of 6 months, with Cy Vance having the option of extending the time because of the evidence that they're going to have to review between all the tax documents he got through the subpoena and all the stuff that was provided by Weisselberg's ex-daughter-in-law and all the testimony that he's gotten from Cohen is so voluminous that just looking at the Trump case, and I assume this grand jury will also be impaneled to handle any other criminal matter that comes up during its time period, is going to be so much. But the members of a grand jury are completely secret. What goes on in a grand jury is completely secret. There is no court reporter, there is no judge, there is no representative for the potential defendant or defendants. It is just the grand jurors, the prosecutor, and another special power a grand jury has is they have the power to issue subpoenas, legally binding subpoenas, meaning they can call witnesses in and force them to give testimony under oath to them. However, none of that testimony will ever be made public. The identity of the jurors will never be made public, and there are 23 of them. Unlike a traditional petite jury, which is what we call a regular jury, they do not need to be unanimous in their decision in a determination of probable cause, which is the lowest burden in the law. They have to make the determination that probable cause exists to reach an arrest based on the evidence that has been presented to them by the prosecutor. And again, it is just the prosecutor. They're there. This one's going to be there for 6 months, having evidence presented to them. All he needs to do is get 12 out of 23, a majority, to agree that there is probable cause, which is, other than reasonable suspicion, which is what it takes for the police to pull you over, reasonable suspicion that you've committed a crime of some sort. Probable cause is generally considered the lowest burden we have in the law because all it is to arrest you. It does not mean you're guilty. It just means you're suspected of a crime. So, who's under investigation by this thing? Well, most people think of it as Trump, but it's actually not Trump. It's the Trump Organization, which is an important denotation because Alan Weisselberg is himself actually being investigated by this grand jury, and they are attempting to flip him in order to get him to give evidence against Donald Trump. What are they investigating? Well, they're investigating basically what Michael Cohen testified to in front of Congress. They are investigating the alleged hush money payments, where Donald Trump was listed as individual one in Michael Cohen's indictment and prosecution for paying off Stormy Daniels. And they are also investigating the allegations that he inflated the value of certain properties like the Trump Hotel, the Trump Towers, Trump Golf Course, just basically any of his properties, that he inflated the value of those properties in order to obtain bank loans, meaning, hey, look, I want to borrow $1 million. I have these 10 properties. Each one's worth, $10 million a piece. Then when it comes around to tax time, in order to get a tax break, he would then turn around and lower the value of the properties so that he could go to the state and federal government and say, hey, look, this property is underwater. I'm losing money on it. I'm entitled to a tax credit and get a tax break as a result of it. Now, floating the value of the property back and forth like this is not allowed. That is fraud. That is criminal. It is prosecutable. That is what they are investigating primarily with all these documents. That is why Alan Weisselberg is so important, because everybody says he knows the financials of the Trump Organization inside out and upside down. He's been in the job since Donald Trump was basically a kid. So he does. And according to interviews given by his former daughter-in-law, she believes that he would flip to save his own neck. Interestingly enough, Ivanka Trump is also potentially on the chopping block because there is an unusual payment to her as a consultant of almost $750,000, or almost $500,000. It's $475 million, $250 million. I apologize. Those numbers like that are just, outside of my fathomization. But she was paid as a consultant while she was actually a member of the Trump Organization. And there's questions as to whether or not you can be considered a consultant when you're actually a member of the organization, which that also in and of itself could be considered tax fraud or tax evasion. So, as I said, it's secret and all of that. Now, the evidence that they have is pointing to the fact that this has gone on. That this is, it's not going to be difficult. I'm sure everyone's heard the statement, prosecutor can indict a ham sandwich. That comes from the fact of they run a grand jury. The defense has no input. They don't have any knowledge of what happens. The only way the defense ever finds out what went on in the grand jury is if an indictment comes rolling out of it and their client gets indicted. So right now, Donald Trump is aware that this grand jury has been impaneled. So is Ivanka. So is Weisselberg. But these grand jurors have not yet been selected. They will send out notices in the mail to 24 individuals, or 23 individuals, and they will spend the next 6 months, or Cy Vance will, putting evidence, calling witnesses. He can ask the grand jury to subpoena whoever he would like, which I can guarantee you're going to see a subpoena fly out for Alan Weisselberg. People can come in and testify voluntarily if they want. They don't have to be subpoenaed. Michael Cohen has already stated that he will voluntarily testify in front of the grand jury in order to indict Donald Trump and other members of the Trump Organization. Effectively, anyone who played any role in the valuation of properties or filing of the taxes. Bear in mind, this is a guy where it came out on his tax returns that he allegedly only paid $750 in taxes. Whether that was just a filing fee, whether that was a mistake, I'm not going to speak to that. I don't have a position on that. Again, I'm trying to stay as neutral as possible. I'm just trying to give the facts here. But a grand jury, as a defense attorney, I'm glad, even though I don't even get the chance to have a grand jury. My clients just get arrested on what's called speedy information, meaning the cops witnessed it, you get arrested. that equals probable cause. You don't need a grand jury to say it. I'm relieved that I don't have to deal with grand juries because it's a prosecutor's domain. Like, it's literally their room. They run it. They own it. They get to know the jurors really well. To give you an idea of how secretive it is, I had mentioned in a previous video regarding Breonna Taylor's grand jury saying that the district attorney or attorney general who had impaneled them to investigate Breonna Taylor, 3 or 4 of them had gone on a 2020 special called Say Your Name and said, he hid evidence from us to keep us from indicting the police. Even a year after they had been impaneled, they blacked out the jurors' faces. That's how secretive it is who the members of the jury are and what their deliberations, if that's what you would call it, because it's kind of more back and forth than that, are. It's just never released. I know they were trying to get some grand jury testimony released regarding the Mueller report, and they couldn't because it's literally held to be that sacred. So Cy Vance has successfully impaneled a grand jury. The notices are going out. I would be shocked if he can't get 12 out of 23 to reach the point where they feel there's enough evidence to indict. Just the stuff that came out in the Cohen indictment alone, if you fill Donald Trump's name in under individual 1, which everyone knows he was individual 1, if you pencil his name in and read the Cohen indictment, he's obviously an unindicted co-conspirator who could easily be indicted under conspiracy theory, conspiracy liability, which conspiracy, all you have to show is that an agreement was reached between the two parties to commit a crime and that the party took a substantial step towards committing that crime. So that could be as little as they agreed to pay off Stormy Daniels. They had a conversation, reached an agreement. Hey, Attorney Cohen, you're going to pay off Stormy Daniels for me? Yes, Mr. Trump, I will. Here's a check for $100,000. That check for $100,000 is enough of a substantial step to indict Donald Trump for being a co-conspirator to that hush money payment. The only way to get out of it is to actually renege on the plan and actually call the authorities on your co-conspirator and have them arrested. That's the only way to get out of being a conspirator once you have reached an agreement and taken a substantial step. The only way to back your way out is to actually break the conspiracy off and report your co-conspirator. So since Donald Trump never did that, that's off the table. So that indictment is pretty much a foregone conclusion from where I'm sitting as a criminal defense attorney. I would be shocked if there wasn't an indictment on that alone. The tax stuff is apparently so confusing and so voluminous that there's millions of pages of it. They've hired expert tax consultants from places like Harvard University, Yale University, all sorts of different places to go through this stuff with a fine-tooth comb. And this was before Cy Vance asked to have the grand jury impaneled. So the fact that he asked to have it impaneled would lead me to believe that they found stuff in there that is incriminating enough to reach probable cause, because the SDNY, while it's known as the Southern District of New York, is typically referred to as the Sovereign District of New York because they kind of go their own way, do their own thing, and are generally considered the most difficult federal jurisdiction to deal with, especially in terms of criminal cases. And Cy Vance has definitely proven himself to not want to let this go. So if there was a federal district court that was going to drop an indictment on a former president, and let's all just take a moment to pause and think about this, how serious that is. To have an ex-president indicted on criminal charges less than a year after he's left office, even if the jury sits for the full 6 months, it would just be over a year. So we're talking about before the next president's term is even run, he's facing a criminal indictment. That would be out of this world. That would be unheard of. Never happened in history. Outrageous. And let's also not forget that the AG in Georgia is still investigating Trump for the election phone call that he made to Brad Raffensperger and his attorney, that the tape got leaked with all the comments about trying to find 11,891 votes, one more vote than he needed, and him actually saying, I just need to find one more vote than we got, which what I think he meant to say is one more vote than I need. Even though Georgia wouldn't have won him the Electoral College in the first place. I don't quite understand why he went out on a limb like that, but that case is still going on as well. They obviously haven't reached the point where they've decided to impanel a grand jury and try to seek an indictment. But the fact a grand jury's been impaneled means they are looking to indict him. That means that Cy Vance is actively trying to indict former President Trump. You do not impanel a grand jury, particularly a special grand jury, and have them seated for 6 months. That's 6 months these people have to go in secret and sit for God knows how long each day and listen to evidence. And then at the end, make a determination if all that evidence, when taken together, amounts to probable cause of a crime. Knowing that they can never speak to anyone about what happened in there. They can never let anyone know they were on that grand jury. They can never be given a court subpoena themselves to have to testify to it. Never be interviewed by the press and tell what happened in there. I mean, a petite jury, what you think of as a regular jury, and a grand jury really couldn't be more opposite-ended things, other than the fact that you get a summons in the mail for both. With a grand jury, there's no voir dire. Cy Vance doesn't get to question them and say, no, I want you on the grand jury. No, I don't. No, just 23 go out in the mail randomly. That's the grand jury. Again, it'll be for 6 months because it's special. I'm trying to make sure that I covered everything. I think that does actually cover everything with Trump, which means it went faster than I thought. If there's any questions, comments, or concerns, again, just to recap it really quick, petite jury, 6 in a civil to 12 in a criminal, proof beyond a reasonable doubt, only sit on that one case, have to go through voir dire. Grand jury, 23 people, typically 1 week to 1 month. They handle all criminal business that comes in, only have to find proof by a preponderance, not a preponderance of the evidence, only have to find probable cause. Only need 12 of the 23, just need a majority vote. Prosecutor has sole dominion over the people in the room. The only people there is the prosecutor, the grand jurors, and a court reporter. No judge, no defense attorney, no defendant. And if they subpoena a witness, because they do have subpoena power to execute a subpoena, if Cy Vance asks them, again, a majority voting yes, will result in a subpoena being issued. Failure to show up and testify in front of the grand jury is in and of itself another crime, so they would have to show up and testify. That is why people are saying that they're so confident that Allen Weisselberg will testify against Donald Trump, because ignoring a subpoena from a grand jury is a crime. And he's likely to catch a subpoena because he's being investigated as the CFO by this grand jury, as well as Ivanka Trump is being investigated. So this is a very, very unique situation. Nothing like this has ever happened before. This is kind of like the AMC stock squeeze, which is why I'm a little late on this video, because I was watching my stock run crazy all day. This is really, really a once-in-a-lifetime thing. You're probably never going to see anything like this again, God willing. I mean, who wants to have ex-presidents getting indicted? That's not a good thing. That's not a good look. I mean, I already have to explain to my 8- and 6-year-old, like, the President of the United States is potentially being indicted. That doesn't feel good as a father to have to explain that to my children. You know, the president's supposed to be somebody that everybody looks up to, not some guy that, like, oh, he was impeached twice in 1 term in office. He created a giant lie. He's also got the lawsuit going for the insurrection, which he filed a response in that, not to get off topic from the original thing, but he filed a response in that claiming his executive privilege and First Amendment free speech rights. The Supreme Court's ruled already in numerous cases that the First Amendment does not protect speech that incites a riot, so that whole defense is out the window. And they've already ruled on his executive privilege, that he can't be prosecuted, idea of that executive privilege extends forever. Those are his 2 defenses to the lawsuit that was filed by the Democratic House member against him that was put into court yesterday. So I don't know who his attorney is that's representing him on that, but I could think of way better defenses than that. Those are the only 2 defenses he put into the lawsuit, like formal written defenses. So Trump is getting hit right now from all sides. It would be very shocking to me if he does not get clipped from one of these angles. I mean, everybody's heard that Georgia election call. There's clearly a violation of Georgia state law at the bare minimum. I'm talking like lowest bar to hurt clear, like no problem, of trying to coerce an election official to tamper with official election results. I mean, it's blatant. He threatens them with potential criminal prosecution. So keep an eye on that case as well, because as the SDNY case heats up, It's actually to the advantage of the Georgia Secretary of State to kind of bandwagon the case together, because the more stuff they can throw at Trump at once, the more difficult it is for him to defend himself. And with the Capitol Riot lawsuits pending, with Georgia looking at him, and now with Cy Vance having won that Supreme Court case, gotten all those tax documents, the president, basically ex-president, former president, sorry, having lost all of the cases that went on his tax records to Cy Vance. In the end, he lost it all the way up the channel to the Supreme Court, and he got those records. They're just dogpiling on him right now, and that's not to his advantage, and it's not going to work to his advantage. So I'm not giving this as political commentary, although I'm sure everyone can figure based on my geographic location and my career path what political affiliation I am with. I'm trying my best not to be as apolitical in my opinion on this matter as possible. I swear to you, this is not anything in any way, shape, or form my opinion of Donald Trump as a person. I'm just looking at what the facts have been presented, what I've found in the media, newspaper reports. I've scoured every media page and coverage I could find regarding this topic. I believe I've covered everything. If anybody feels anything's missing or that I've been one-sided and they have something that I've missed, as always, I welcome your comments and your questions and your rebuttals to what I say. If you feel that I'm wrong, hey, I'm totally open to it. As usual, not going to ask you to subscribe or hit like or anything like that. It's just not my style. I'm here to just help and try and enlighten people as best as I can, because I really don't feel the media does a very good job of explaining the legal intricacies of things. They'll just say like, oh, there's a grand jury. But like, to be honest with you, before I was a lawyer, I didn't know what a grand jury was versus a regular jury. Like, how are you supposed to know there's 3 times as many people and they don't have to have proof beyond a reasonable doubt and they can hear numerous cases and they serve for days to weeks to months at a time and there's no voir dire? And I mean, nobody explains that stuff. So there's got to be somebody around where you can get this information. I'm just trying to make it so that somebody gives it to you in as straight-faced and straight-laced a manner as possible. That's all I'm here for. I appreciate it, as always, your likes and comments and your views. It means a lot to me. It keeps me going and keeps me making these. I hope everybody's safe and healthy. I'm not going to promote the vaccine, but I did get vaccinated. 2 shots, had my second shot 2 days ago. I will state openly on YouTube, I did have horrible side effects from my first shot. I felt I had the Pfizer vaccination. It took 2 doses. There was 3-week gap in between. After the first shot, it felt like someone had stuck a shiv in between my second and third rib and twisted it nonstop for like a 2-week period, basically almost right up until the day that I got the second shot 2 days ago. The day after the second shot felt worse than any of the days from the first one. But as of today, only if I take a deep breath in does it really still hurt. So I'm not going to advocate the vaccine for anybody, but I did it. I did it mostly for my kids because they can't be vaccinated and I don't want to be a carrier that's asymptomatic, which is what really is the big concern, is that people are carrying asymptomatically and giving it to people, and I don't want to get my kids sick. So that's why I did it. But that's off topic. That should pretty much cover the Trump situation. Again, if anything else explodes, blows up, I'll do a follow-up. If anything happens with Gates and Giuliani, I'll also do a follow-up. Keep the questions and comments coming on that. You guys have come up with some great stuff that I hadn't thought about. No point in making another video when I can just write about it. But there was a video that I linked in the description to that video that basically confirmed what I had said, that the entire case is turning on whether or not Giuliani was acting on behalf of President Trump at the time. That kind of the feds let slip. I have a feeling in this Trump case, they're going to be a lot more tight-laced with the facts like they are in the Gates case, because the stakes are way higher when it's an active politician or a former president than, you know, a former mayor who's basically made a joke of himself by scheduling a press conference next to a porno shop at a landscaping facility because it had the name Four Seasons. I mean, let's be honest. Rudy hasn't exactly held up the mantle of America's mayor, and he's not really as much of a concern as someone like Matt Gaetz, who's a prominent figure, and obviously Donald Trump, who's still got 70-something million people thinking the election was stolen and that he's going to have a chance to run in 2024, when this move by Cy Vance pretty much links it up that I don't think Donald Trump's going to get the chance to run. He's going to have a bit too much stuff on his plate to deal with running for office. That is an opinion, not a fact. So I broke my own rule. But Hope everybody's safe and healthy. You know, be safe, be smart, be healthy. The pandemic is not over yet. You know, if you don't believe in masks, that's your business, but just try to stay safe and healthy. As always, appreciate you watching. Sorry it took so long. Be well. Take care. Best.